Hello and welcome once again to one of our landlord and tenant update videos. For those that don't know by now, my name is Matt Dilks. I'm one of the directors at Christopher Shaw, and I'm joined by James Tiller, a fellow director of the business. Hello, James.
Hi.
Hello. Today we're going to go slightly off our normal path and be talking HR, which is a subject that will be relevant to many of you right now due to the recent coronavirus interruptions. And we'll be looking to understand the government job retention scheme a little better. We're delighted to be joined by Rosemary Darby-Jenkins from Signpost HR Solutions. Hello, Rosemary. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, Matt. How are you?
Good. Good. I understand you're holding the kitchen from the family this morning, so we'll try and keep it a bit brief so everyone can get fed. But thank you for joining us. Obviously, taking time out from not only work at the moment but from family. It is obviously very tricky to balance both. So perhaps it's a good start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and what exactly you do.
I will, of course. Thank you. Yes. So I have 4 children, but three of them are outside this room at the moment, waiting for their breakfast. No, that's fine. It's not that bad. They're teenagers, so they can hold on.
They can wait.
So I've been an HR professional. Yeah, they can wait. I've been an HR professional for 30 years now. 20 of those years I worked in the corporate world in large organisations. Last one was at LV. And then 10 years ago, I set up my own HR consultancy business. So I work with mainly small and medium-sized organisations across the country, a lot in Dorset, but across the country. I've got clients in London, I've got clients in Scotland. And I am their virtual HR professional. So when they have enough staff to be concerned that they want to get it right, but not enough staff to need somebody in-house, I provide their guidance on everything to do with employment.
Fantastic.
So yeah, for the last 10 years I've been doing that, and for 30 years I've been working with employment law, but we're working in a very unusual time at the moment, aren't we? Unprecedented time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've heard a lot about the government job retention scheme, which has hastily been brought in to try and absorb some of the shock to the economy caused by the coronavirus pandemic. So could you explain a bit more about it, what it actually means?
Yes, absolutely. So the 20th of March, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, introduced the coronavirus job retention scheme to us. The intention, I think, of the government was to enable businesses to just have a bit more time before they had to make big decisions. It was to try to avoid people having to make large-scale redundancies that they didn't really want to have to make, because of course this has affected everybody. It's interrupted most people's businesses. Yeah. So the job retention scheme was introduced to buy time for employers. They can access a grant, and the grant will be paid by the government to cover 80% of an employee's monthly wage costs, up to a maximum of £2,500 gross per month. So essentially what it's doing is giving people from the 1st of March is the earliest date you can claim from, until the 31st of May. So initially a 3-month period, which I presume was designed to coincide with the government's view that that's how long it would take for us to get on top of coronavirus before we could potentially start to go back to businesses operating a little bit more normally again. So a 12-week period that you can continue to employ your staff, so they remain employed, but they are furloughed. And furlough is a term that we've never used in this country before. And essentially, it means laid off on a temporary basis. Yeah. So if you're laid off permanently, that is redundancy, and this is a temporary layoff, and we're calling it furlough. So most people, I think, will have heard of furlough now because it's become everyday language to us. Yeah. Even if they've not heard of the job retention scheme, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. And the million-dollar question, which you covered very briefly, is, how long is this expected to last for? Is there any sort of guide to the furlough?
Yes. So at the moment, at any point between the 1st of March and the 31st of May, you can be furloughed, and your employer can claim furlough pay. So at the moment, it's a 3-month opportunity.
Yeah, and it's
some
good to
people
get on
will
it straight away.
That's right. Some people will have made decisions to furlough staff very early on in that process, and others will have only just started to think about it, perhaps because the impact on their business is only just starting to hit.
Yeah. I mean, from your experience, how have your clients approached the scheme with their employees?
Well, you can furlough somebody if either A, they can't work from home, and a lot of people have, obviously, like we all are now, started to work from home, but it's not possible for everybody to do that. Logistically, it doesn't always work for people to work from home. You can also furlough people if they are unable to work safely in their place of work, because some people can still work from their office or their place of work as long as they can keep social distancing rules. But if you can't do any of that, and there is no work for you to do safely, then you can be furloughed. So many employers have still got people working, they've still got a need for people to work, but they can work from home, or they can work in their normal place of work safely, keeping social distancing rules. If they can't do any of those things, then they have chosen to furlough other people rather than make them redundant. So it's not a case that everybody has to be furloughed, because still there is work for some people to do that they can do safely. But if there isn't, or they can't, then furlough is a great option, because it allows those people to continue to be employed and continue to receive 80% of their pay, up to that maximum of £2,500 a month gross.
Okay. From an employee's point of view, Rosemary, what are the benefits of actually being on furlough from an employee's point of view?
Well, essentially, it's preserving your continuity of employment. So it means that you've still got a job, you're still being paid, and if you earn more than £2,500 a month, then you're probably only getting £2,500 a month, unless your employer chooses to top that up, which they can do. It's certainly not a requirement, but it is an option. For anybody who earns £2,500 a month or less, then they're getting 80% of their monthly salary up to that maximum. So your continuity of employment is preserved. You're still an employee, you still accrue holiday, and you still accrue all your usual employment rights. The alternative would probably have been that you were made redundant. So there's a lot of advantages.
And is it possible for people to roll on and off of furlough? Could you be on furlough, then suddenly be back at work, earning less money because you're on reduced hours or something like that? Is that possible?
It is possible. It is possible. So some of my clients have had to do furlough on a rotational basis, where the minimum period of time that you can be furloughed for is 3 weeks at each time. So if you were furloughed for 3 weeks, you could potentially come back to work for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then be furloughed again, but you'd have to be furloughed for 3 weeks each time. Okay. And while you are furloughed, you are not allowed to do any work at all for your employer. You're allowed to do a bit of training, and you're allowed to do volunteering work, but you cannot work for your employer at all during a period of furlough. So sometimes what's happened is that employers have found that after a few weeks, they've actually got some work for people to do, so they've called them back from furlough. That might not be on full pay, it might be on reduced hours, but they need that work to be done, and it is actually the employer's decision.
Okay. So we're recording this on the 17th of April. And there's been quite a few significant changes in the last couple of days about the government retention scheme, hasn't there? Do you want to just talk us through those?
So we know two things now that we didn't know earlier in the week. First of all, we know that the portal, the online portal that HMRC will be using for employers to claim this grant, will launch on Monday the 20th of April. So that's news. We also know that previously the qualification employment cut-off date was the 28th of February 2020. You had to have been employed and on your employer's payroll on the 28th of February to be able to be furloughed. They've now changed that date, and it's now the 19th of March. So now they're saying anybody who was employed on their employer's payroll as at the 19th of March 2020 can be furloughed, because there were people who had changed jobs in the period between the 28th of April and the date that the retention scheme was announced, which was the 20th of March, who were caught with nobody wanting to claim them, if you like. Their previous employers could have taken them back on again, but there's a risk to an employer in doing that, so many people chose not to. So now, as long as you're employed by the 19th of March, as at the 19th of March, on your employer's payroll, you can be furloughed.
And are there any conditions for employers at the end of the scheme that they need to have met in order to, well, is there any conditions on them?
No, anybody can claim the government job retention scheme. Any employer of any size can claim it. They will probably need to be able to evidence, if HMRC ever audited this, they need to be able to evidence those things. The employees who they've claimed for were employed on the qualifying date. That's very important. Also that they had their agreement to be furloughed. That's also very important. And also that they did no work for them at all during the time of furloughed, and that they were furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks. Those are the main conditions. We don't know whether HMRC will be auditing this actively or not. So we can only advise that it's sensible and best practice to tick all those boxes. If you don't, there is a risk that the government would audit the furlough situation, and that grant would therefore not be payable to you if you hadn't met those conditions. That's the risk.
Right, thank you.
So I think one of the final questions, which flows off the back of that, the risk of not getting the grant, is how long do you think it will take payments to come through to companies, and could this result in delays in employees potentially receiving payments?
So we've been told this week by HMRC that their online portal will launch on Monday, as I say, the 20th, and they have committed in the guidance that they've sent to employers that they will pay those claims once they've received them within 6 working days.
Oh, that's really quick.
That
is quick.
Yeah.
Yes, you won't be able to go onto the portal until Monday, but you should be able to access it on Monday. I think they've written to all employers and they've told them how to access it, the information they will need to be able to access it, and they've committed to paying, as I say, within 6 working days. So hopefully that's a timescale that most people can live with.
Yeah, I mean, that probably alleviates a lot of stress of cash flow issues.
Absolutely.
For a lot of companies that may have been thinking they might have to wait 2-3 months to see it come back. I think 6 days is, like you said, it should give everyone enough breathing space to get that sorted.
I think hopefully if people pay their staff at the end of the month, the money will have come in to be able to meet April payroll, which would be great news. Yeah,
absolutely. Brilliant. Well, look, that wraps us up for this video. Thank you for joining us and holding the family back from their breakfast.
That's okay.
So
nice to talk to you.
They don't hold it against you today. It's raining today as well. The first day was rain.
Yes.
So yeah, it's going to be a very unusual day for a lot of us after being spoilt with at least good weather. You know, looking at the positives, at least we've had a great run of weather for those of us that have been able to sit in the garden. So
absolutely, it's made a big difference in our house.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, enjoy the rain today. Enjoy your weekend, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you both.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.